Hey guys, U.S.M.C. Contra here, and today we're talking about something we've all been waiting for months. The Zarius Heist update is coming out for Larcenauts. And today what we're going to do is we're going to give you guys a little sneak peek preview of it, talk a little bit about the new character, the new map, and the new game mode, which we all know as Payload. So without further ado, let's get started. First off, as you guys go into the game, you'll notice that the loot boxes are all required to be opened that you've had previously. So if you've been saving them up, if you have 50, 100, 150, 200, etc., whatever, however many loot boxes you have, you will be required to open them when you log in after you update your game. From what it looked like during the playtest is, luckily you got, right out of the box, I got Imperia. I didn't have to buy her. I didn't have to unlock her through a loot box. It was given to me, but I'm not sure if that's a playtest thing or if that's going to be a something different in the actual game, if you'll have to buy her or find her through a loot box. But the loot boxes, when I logged in, just kept giving me experience towards her and exclusively her. So right out of the box, or right out of the gate, I think I had about 50 loot boxes, and it got me up to about level 11, I think, with her. So I unlocked both slates, and I actually got a couple of slates for her. Nothing special, but a couple interesting things. But regardless, moving on. This new character's name is Imperia, and she looks like an imp, which is probably where they got her name Imperia from. If any of you have played Dungeons and Dragons, she'll remind you probably a lot of a tiefling. So she's kind of got that character type for her going. They classify her as a ranger class, and her main weapon is the Vipera strike, which is a bow. A lot of you guys have been asking for a bow user, and we finally got one, so there you go. However, she might not quite be what some of you guys are looking for, but we'll get into that here in a second. Her second weapon is that good old the standard, which is the SMG, which we all know and love because it just absolutely melts people sometimes. Getting a little bit more into the Vipera strike, let's talk a little bit about that. So this is a bow that has two modes that you can really fire. You can fire it vertically, which fires one arrow, and we'll talk about offensive and supportive abilities of the bow here in a second. But so you have the vertical, and then you have the horizontal also, which if you change the bow to horizontal, it will actually fire three arrows instead of just one. Another thing that's really important to note is that the draw, how far you draw it back, matters. So for the vertical, how far you draw it back is going to dictate how fast and how much damage that arrow does to an enemy. If you do it horizontal, what the draw is going to do is the more you draw it back, the more narrow that arrow spread is going to be. So if you do a shallow draw, the arrows are going to be really spread out. So you'll have one in the middle and then two that go off to the sides. But if you do a really far draw, they'll all be not right next to each other, but they'll be a lot closer together when they launch. And off in the distance, they'll stay a lot closer together. So let's talk about offensive and supportive capabilities of that bow. For offensive, the vertical, if you shoot vertical, it's going to do more damage. It's going to shoot a lot faster. However, if you shoot horizontal, you have a lot better chances of actually hitting your enemy. However, those arrows individually are going to do a lot less damage. So like, let's say you're shooting horizontally, you shoot your rounds, your three arrows, and if only one of those arrows hit, it's going to do a portion of what a vertical arrow would do. So if you hit two, I think, if I recall correctly, two arrows horizontally don't quite equate to one arrow vertically, but if you're able to hit all three arrows horizontally, it will do more damage than if you were just hit that single arrow vertically. The overcharge capabilities of it acts a lot like Salter's grenades when they do not impact on a person. So it hits and it sticks and it blinks for a couple of seconds, and then after that it will explode, dealing AoE damage. Not a ton, but it's nice to have that AoE capability with the OC. Let's move on to the supportive kind of abilities of her bow. So her bow actually will heal teammates also. So if you shoot a teammate, it'll heal them. There wasn't too much of a difference between vertical and horizontal healing wise goes, and I noticed there was no difference when you shot him in the head vice if you just shot him in the torso. So as far as healing goes, it's a great supportive role to have, and it's really nice because if you have a enemy and an ally in the same area, and like let's say you decide to go horizontal, you can shoot horizontal and shoot those 3 arrows, and if it hits hits a teammate, it'll start healing them, and then if one of the other ones hits an enemy, it'll damage them. Because I know there's been a lot of times where I see, I've got an ally and an enemy, they're really close, they're freaking basically making circles around each other, and I'm trying to shoot that enemy, and when my ally gets in front, my rounds will hit him and do nothing, and so he kind of gets in the way. But this makes it so that no longer is an issue. So either regardless, if you hit someone, you're either healing them or hurting them, which is really nice to have. Now you don't really have to worry about doing nothing when your ally's in the way, because now you're healing them. If they move out of the way and that enemy is in the way, you're now hurting them. So it's kind of like a win-win situation. However, the one downfall of the Vipera strike is the slow firing, the airtime that arrow takes to get from you to that enemy. And so that's one of the downfalls of it that I found myself personally and quite a few other people missing quite a few rounds, because with it being in the air so long, it makes it easier to dodge the further away enemies are. So you will have to deal with that. It's kind of a lot more of a high risk, high reward type weapon. The boat also does have an overcharge for the heal. So if you overcharge it vertically and you fire and you hit a teammate, it'll have kind of a similar effect to the enemy, where it hits and it kind of blinks for a few seconds and explodes, except if you hit a teammate, it'll hit them, blink for a few seconds and explode, and then if any allies are near them, it's kind of like a burst AoE on them, which is kind of really cool. Nice little additional overcharge for the bow's healing capabilities. Moving on, we're going to move on to the abilities. Her first one being that Dyna Burst. With this Dyna Burst, she's going to go invisible, not fully invisible, partially invisible. You'll be able to see her a little bit more than in Evander, when you can kind of see his blue outline. But the main thing about this is she goes invulnerable for a few seconds, and I think after 5 seconds, she starts regaining health very quickly. There are a few things that will trigger her to drop this Dyna Burst. For example, if she runs over an Evander trap, it will trap her and it will cause this ability to drop, which will then render her vulnerable to any attacks. But outside of that, if people try and shoot you, the rounds will just go either, I don't know if they go straight through you or they just don't do anything. I think I recall they just literally just go straight through you as you're invulnerable, which is kind of nice. It's kind of like cheese crystallisis, gives her a little bit more survivability. So moving on to the Parasphere field, this is a deployable. Basically, what you do is whoever's in the field, if they are shooting an enemy and that enemy takes damage, you'll kind of see an orb that goes from the enemy into the deployable. Once that deployable gets a certain amount of damage that was dealt, it will do an AoE burst of healing, which is extremely potent and extremely powerful. The downfall of that is I found a lot of people going outside of it. If you can deploy it in an area and you have your teammates who are in that area causing an enemy damage, it will go crazy. That it'll just keep bursting, and it will keep everyone alive in there. So that's very powerful. It doesn't last for too terribly long, and again, people have to stay inside. They have to be shooting from the inside of the circle at an enemy to actually register that damage to fill it up. Basically, the deployable itself has to hit a certain amount. So in the playtest, they said they were going to get rid of this, but in the playtest, you actually saw a number on there. Every time you shot an enemy, the orb would go in, kind of like I said, and it would put a certain amount in there. So like, let's say I shoot an enemy in the SMG, I'm shooting an enemy, every shot does 20 damage. So maybe after 5 or 6 shots, it would fill up to over 100. Once it hit 100, that's when it would push out that burst AoE of healing, and then it'd reset down to, well, it would carry over, but it would just keep adding up and adding up. Moving on to her grenade, the Animax is a heavy damage grenade, not quite as powerful as Salter's. It does a good amount of damage though. Another perk to it is it will drain OC from the enemies that it impacts, so that was kind of cool. So those are her abilities. We're going to move on a little bit against, or how she paired up against the other characters. I felt like she was very well balanced. She definitely does not do nearly as much damage, at least I felt. She's not as heavy hitter as the other classes. She definitely, I feel like she should definitely stay more in the supportive role. Can she kill other characters, absolutely, no doubt about it. And she actually does fairly well against characters such as Vod, Kalima. I felt like I took out quite a bit of, and Thal, those bigger targets that have a wider base, especially if you're using that horizontal shot and you can land all three of those arrows on target, does a substantial amount more damage. So I felt like going up against those characters, definitely a little bit more effective. However, going up against Vanders, Vander was the big one that really I noticed that had a big impact against Imperia, and as well as Chi. Chi did fairly well against Imperia, and it was kind of difficult taking him down as Imperia. So going on to Chi versus Imperia as a healer, Chi has more sustainability, absolutely, and he has more reliability. That gun, that leech gun, stays on your target, and you don't have to like aim for him or anything like that. By Imperia, you gotta you got to make sure that you're hitting your target, because I've had multiple times where I'm trying to hit targets and stuff, and that's the downfall with the bow, is how much you miss shots. So Imperia definitely has a lot more burst damage. I ran a couple of tests which are playing right now. You'll be able to see I ran Chi healing Thal being shot by a Thal. I ran a Chi healing a Thal, same scenario, except with the healing ring, and then I did a little test of Imperia just using her bow healing Thal, and the amount which she can heal, is the burst is just absurd. So she is definitely, if the scenario is perfect, kind of like this, what you guys are seeing, she will definitely out heal Chi. But again, Chi is more reliable and more low risk, low reward type healer. So with that, also we have the new map, Zarius Heist, which looks absolutely beautiful, along with the new game mode. Currently, upon release, the devs said that the only game mode that will work on the new map is the payload, and unfortunately, payload won't work on any of the other maps just because they're so small. But that is the new Zarius Heist update in a nutshell. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys are as excited as I am. Again, this update is dropping on September 30th, so we're only a couple days away. So I will see you guys in game when this update drops. Catch you guys around.